warm welcome to everybody to Pyrotechnics, a rock and metal music podcast brought to you in association with Fireworks Rock and Metal magazine. Issue 106 is now out, and if you'd like to buy it, either go to WH Smith's or McCall's, or even better, come to our website, www.fireworks-magazine.com. You can buy either the printed copy or a digital download. We have another fun-packed show for you today, so without further ado, let me welcome my co-host. It's our deputy editor, Dave Cockett. Welcome, Dave.
Cheers, Pete. Good evening, everybody.
And it's our art editor, James Gaden. Welcome, James.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back.
Right, so we're going to start off with a quiz question. I'm going to set these guys another question. For those who watched or listened to the last episode, you'll know that Dave took the honours in the first one. So, James, this is his chance for you to get your own back on him and draw level. So I'm going to name 4 bands from America and Canada, but which group has had the most UK top 10 albums up to date? Now, before anyone starts shouting at me, I've got this information from the officialcharts.com website, so if it's wrong, you can blame them and not me. So your 4 choices, chaps, are these. A, Nickelback. B, Aerosmith. C, Linkin Park. Or D, Pearl Jam. So get your thinking caps on for the next, well, I say hour. We know what I like at timekeeping, so we'll see how that goes. But basically for the next hour. And give me your answers at the end. Right, before we get into the conversation that we're going to have a song. And this one is chosen by Dave. Apparently he can't stop listening to it. So, you know, there's no better build-up than that. So it better be good, Dave. It is Hell, Fire and Damnation by Saxon. And of course, absolute banging tune there from Saxon. And they're also another one of our interviews in issue 106. So another reason to go out and get yourself a copy. Right, let's go into the main section now. So recently, there was a post on the Tinternet about singers being replaced by others and either making the band better. So in true fashion of internet thieves, I've nicked it for myself and I've given it to these guys to discuss. But we're going to do it with a bit of a twist. So this one is singers that have replaced other singers in the band and made it better or worse. You see what I did there? Yeah. So the guys are going to get 15 minutes to give us 3 examples each. I mean, if they can stick to 15 minutes, is another issuing point, but we'll find out. And they're going to give us a reason why they think the singers have made them better or worse. And then hopefully we'll get a bit of a debate going. But obviously, you guys as well, let us know. Have they got it right? Have they got it wrong? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments. So, James, let's go with you first. Your 3 choices are as follows, please.
I'm going to pick, for singers who made the band better, I'm going to have Survivor with Jimmy Jameson.
Mhm.
And I'm going to go for a controversial one that a lot of people will go, what? But I don't care because it's my opinion. And I'm going to go Lynyrd Skynyrd because I like him better with Johnny Van Zant than with Ronnie. Even though I know Ronnie was the one who brought in all the classic songs, but I like Johnny as a singer better, and I like the Johnny albums. So those are my 2 that I think made the band better. And somewhat controversially, I'm going to say the Dead Daisies with John Corabi got worse. And I'll explain why, but those are my 3 choices.
Go on then, Dave. Yeah, go on, Dave. You give us your 3 and then we'll get into a debate about them.
Okay, my 3 are probably fairly obvious given the background that I come from. Firstly, I would go with made it better. I would pick Bruce Dickinson, replacing Paul Di'Anno in Iron Maiden. I would, excuse me, I would pick Bon Scott replacing Dave Evans in AC/DC. And for making it worse, I would pick Ripper Owens for replacing Rob Halford in Judas Priest.
Okay. Right. So when the guys were discussing, well, telling us about those 3, Dave nearly had a coronary when James mentioned the last one.
Okay, so the reason I said that I think John Corabi made the Dead Daisies worse is because when the Daisies first started, they had John Stevens as their singer, who I absolutely rate. I think he's fantastic. And, you know, he was brilliant with Noiseworks. He was in excess. He was great there. He's got a great solo career. Comes in, he basically writes that first album with a couple of other guys. That was his job. It was like, oh, I want to put this band together. Can you write us an album material? He did. He sang on it. He did brilliantly. And then he sort of gets ousted from the band through no real fault of his own, through circumstances outside of his control. And the following gigs that he was contracted to do when he was removed, they brought in Bernard Fowler to just fill in, just to fill the shows off before Corabi gets the job. And in comes Corabi, and they make the Revolution album. And for me, I was just like, yeah, it's all right. The only track that I really, really liked on it was Mexico. And that's a John Stevens track. That was one that was written while Stevens was in the band. It was meant to be a John Stevens song. So that was the only one that made me think, oh yeah, that's good. I like that. But the rest of it, I was just like, yeah, whatever. It's just a generic rock record now. It didn't have any real special appeal. And then they made another one and another one. And I was just like, I've lost interest in this band. And then they brought in Glenn Hughes. And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh, interest restored." And Glenn comes in, makes the Holy Ground album brilliant. Absolutely loved it. I was like, "This is awesome." Made a second one, which I thought was a surprise. I wasn't sure he'd stay long enough to do 2. Toured with him. He got sick for a few shows, so they got Dino Jellysick to come in and cover it. So on that basis, the Dead Daisies have had 5 singers, and for me, Corabi is the 5th best.
Hmm.
He's all right for what he does. I'm sure he puts on a great live show and he's an entertaining frontman. But on the strength of the recorded work, he's by far the weakest singer for me, and probably the weakest writer out of those guys as well. Because the songs he's done, I'm like, all right, but I won't call them memorable. They're not something that's really stuck in my head. And when I've heard him try and sing, like Lock and Load from the John Stevens era, didn't get anywhere near it for me. and I don't think he'd get anywhere near the Glenn Hughes ones either. But that's why for me, when he came back to the Daisies, that was a step backwards for me. I was like, well, you've had your go. You made more albums than anybody else. Did we really need you back? Could you not got someone else? But they didn't. They went back with him. So for me, it was like, yeah, that lost interest again now. That's why I've picked him.
Firstly, I would agree. There's nobody's going to top Glenn Hughes coming into any band until Glenn Hughes is no longer with us. The best thing the Dead Daisies have done is Holy Ground. The second one, I didn't think was as good. Like you, I was surprised he stuck around for that long, but he did. So I saw him live with a couple of times with Glenn, and they were great. I must admit, I was a little bit concerned going into it because I'd seen them live with Karabi for a number of times before that, and they just had something. They created a groove, locked into it as a band, and nailed it show after show after show. Now, I'll admit that Stevens is a better singer, better songwriter. I don't think he and David Lowie got on particularly that well. But I don't know. From what I've heard, I don't think that the shows went the way that they wanted them to go. It's a rock and roll collective. That's what they keep selling it as. And it's going to have a transient procession of musicians for as long as it goes on, I believe. But there was, as I say, I always go back to that bit. The times I've seen them, the live recordings that I've heard with Karabi, just nailed it. They had that extra something. With Hughes, it was different. Vocally, it was a masterclass. But it stepped back a little bit from that sort of dangerous edge, if you like, that Karabi brought. And that's why I always thought, I wouldn't say he was the best singer in the band, because as I've said, nobody's going to top Glenn Hughes. He was just the best fit. And I thought all round, okay, his vocals, it worked. Worked on the albums to a greater or lesser degree, but God, it worked live. The whole thing just worked. And then when they brought Doug Aldridge in to partner him on guitar, that's when it exploded for me. That era, and I wonder if that's what David Lowie's actually seen and tried to go back for. Now Glenn's gone. Glenn was always going to go. He was never going to be there. But to go back to John Karabi, are we looking at somebody saying, yeah, I think that when we were doing it live, that was the best, and that's what they've gone back to. That's my take.
And I'm not burying Karabi at all. It's just I don't think he's right for that band. I thought he was brilliant in the Scream.
Yeah.
And I don't think he did a bad job in Motley Crue either. But for the Daisies, it just didn't work for me. But there we go. So I'm on to the ones I like now. Okay, so I'll go with Survivor because I think a lot of people would agree with this one. They made some great stuff with Dave Bickler, but I think they went to another level when Jimmy Jameson came in. Jimmy Jameson is one of the all-time greats in my book, and he comes in. The album Vital Signs, masterpiece. You're not going to do much better than that as a pop rock sort of AOR record. Jim Petrick's songwriting and Jimmy Jameson's voice, you can't really go far wrong. When Seconds Count, another belter. Too Hot to Sleep, probably the best of the three for my money because it was a bit harder edged. Yeah, Reach once a good, but because that missed Jim Petrick. But that like trilogy of albums, as good as some of the Dave Bickler tracks were, it was more like the odd song here and there for me. Whereas the Jimmy Jameson albums, it was full albums. I never hit skip once on any of those songs. And you look at sort of Jimmy Jameson's body of work, and he was just class from start to finish. He had such a great turn, and one of those guys who could sing the phone book and make it sound good. And he did a great job live. He could do the Bickler stuff when he had to. He did a good job. For me, it's just like he was the guy for that band. I don't have anything against Dave Bickler, but I just don't think Dave was in Jimmy's league. So I think Jimmy Jameson definitely made Survivor better.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I've got a lot of time for the Dave Bickler period. I thought Premonition was a great album, but I would agree with you. He's without doubt, Vital Signs is by far and away the best Survivor album to me. Too Hot to Sleep's probably not too far behind it, although, like you say, it's heavier. I would say yes, that when Jimmy came along, wasn't that Bickler couldn't sing, because he could, but he got everything. He got the voice, he got the image. And I think the image to start with is where Bickler suffered. You look at the Eye of the Tiger video, he looked like an extra from an episode of Some Mothers Do Have Them. Which just didn't fit with people's perception of what a rock band should be at that time. Graham Bonnet suffered from a similar sort of thing with Rainbow. He looked like a cabaret singer fronting a metal band. And great as his voice was, it just didn't work. And I think that was potentially part of the thing with Survivor. That you've got to remember, as the 70s gave way to the 80s and MTV came in, image was the all important. Music became secondary. And I think that was part of the thing that you look at Bickler and you think, nah, that don't work. Vocally, he did. But then along came Jimmy Jameson and bettered it. So, yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah. The thing is, well, with like you say about Dave Bickler with his beret and stuff like that, I remember seeing, like, the first time I saw the Eye of the Tiger video, you had Bickler with his beret and Peter with his big Deirdre Barlow glasses, and you're like, oh, that's a tough group, isn't it?
So rock and metal. Yes.
So my final choice then is, like I say, the slightly controversial one, where I've said Lynyrd Skynyrd, because yes, I appreciate you've got the Ronnie Van Zant classic period that had all the big hits, all the big songs, but when his brother came in, I was like, I like this guy much more as a singer. I think he's a much better singer. Yes, you could say he's nowhere near as good a lyricist, but as a singer, I was like, this guy's league's head. And I thought he did such a great job when they made the sort of tribute live album. I thought he came in and he took those songs that were his and did a really good job. And then they just carried on and went on, and they started making these albums with Johnny Van Zant fronting the band, and they just got better and better. And I remember hearing the God and Guns album, and I was just like, this is unbelievable. What an album. And a lot of bands, you think, oh, time they're packed up, or so, they're playing the same set list every night and they're not really doing anything new. Skinner didn't do that. They started making albums and they got better. God and Guns was brilliant. Last of a Dying Breed was brilliant. Vicious Cycle before God and Guns, that was brilliant. They brought Ricky Medlock in. It was like they just found this extra level. And as good as as classic as the early stuff is, which obviously I've got in my collection, I do tend to play the Johnny Van Zant stuff more. So for me, personally, I know there'll be loads of purists that go, oh, bollocks. But for me, Johnny Van Zant made them better because I listen to his period more than I do the classic.
I see exactly where you're coming from. And that is a tough call. You're right, the tribute album that they did, the first thing that they did after they came back, sort of, it was fantastic. It was immense. Did it live up to One More from the Road? Yeah, it probably did, to be honest with you. There were times you could shut your eyes and you could see Ronnie. I know that they're brothers, and genetically they come from similar makeup and they've got similar sorts of voices. But I would agree with it. If I had to put hand on heart, I would say God and Guns is probably my favourite Skynyrd album.
Same.
Yes, the problem I have is it's one of those where it suffers from that it's a band that was thrown together because of circumstances. Had the plane crash not happened, and Ronnie died, they probably would never have got to that stage. They probably would have fizzled out in a bunch of fistfights and lawsuits. But they didn't. He died at this, if there is a perfect time, at the perfect time. His memory will live forever. Their music from that time will live forever. I suppose it's something that Pete and I were talking about earlier. It's a bit like Queen when Freddie died. They then came back with and did the Paul Rodgers thing. Now, Paul Rodgers is a legend. He's a fantastic blues singer, but he wasn't right for Queen. He sounded more like Bad Company. And as I say, you were never going to get anybody to replace Freddie Mercury. And I think that Queen realised that when it had done that, the best that they could do was, I won't say get a Freddie Mercury tribute act, because that's a little bit unfair. But the guy that they've got now, he does a pretty good Freddie Mercury. He's very flamboyant, puts on a good show. But that's the flip of what I'm trying to say, is that Skinner, it's almost been seamless. It's almost as if that band were grafted from there, put into the mid-80s, and have carried on ever since, pretty much as it was. And like you say, it's just got better and better and better and better and better. So whilst it's hard for me to say that he made it better, he certainly didn't make it any worse. He just continued what was a great band for me.
Yeah. Right, well, less hate mail than I was expecting on that one, to be honest.
Okay, it's my turn.
Yeah, I was just going to say, audience, do you agree with what James and Dave have said there? Again, let us know in the comments. Some good points made. Bit of debate as well, which is what we like. But yeah, I think, Dave, you said Bruce Dickinson, didn't you, for Iron Maiden, which I think a lot of people will probably agree, but I know there's some out there that won't agree. But obviously, give me your reasons why you think Bruce is ideal.
I think Iron Maiden got to where Iron Maiden are for two things. Firstly, Steve Harris is one of the most driven individuals you'll ever come across. Secondly, they had the 70s, 80s version of Peter Grant in Rod Smallwood. That guy knew how to market, that guy knew how to get noticed, and they just took off. It was obvious pretty much from day one, when the whole new wave of British heavy metal thing kicked off, that Maiden were going to make it. You could draw lots on who were going to join them, but Maiden were going to make it, and they did. I know that there are a lot of people out there that like to put on the rose-coloured glasses from time to time and look back to those first two albums with Paul Di'Anno. Now, there were some great tracks on it, undoubtedly. Killers is probably more consistent than the debut, although I think from that era, that's the likes of Phantom of the Opera, probably the best track. Well, quite apart from the fact that he got problems and he brought problems to the band, Paul Di'Anno was never going to be able to take it to the level of sophistication where Steve Harris could see it going. And I think that the difference between Killers and Number of the Beast is like night and day. Number of the Beast will always stand the test of times as one of those sort of pivotal albums. It's a bit like Deep Purple within rock. It was a game changer. Don't think it's the best album that they did with Bruce, but it will always have that place in history because it was that game changer. And I think that when Bruce came in, not only did they get a better singer, they got a better frontman, they got a better lyricist, they got a better entertainer. I hesitate to say they got a better all-round human being, but they certainly got a better all-round musician that could share and run with the vision that Steve Harris had got, that I don't think that Paul Di'Anno could. So that's why I would put Bruce in there. I was disappointed when he left. Nothing against Blaze Bayley, but the albums that they did with him won a patch on when Bruce came back. I know that people have turned the nose up at Senjutsu. They've said that the mix sounds muddy, but I think if you think that isn't exactly the sound that Steve Harris wanted and that they paid Kevin Shirley to get, you're living in Cloud Cuckoo Land. That's exactly what and he's just brilliant. I think he gets better and better, and they've earned their place where they are, and a large proportion of that is down to Dickinson.
Some fair points, James.
I'd push this. To be honest, I'm not the biggest Maiden fan, and the reason for that is Bruce Dickinson's voice, his style, it kind of grates on me. So if you said to me, which are your favourite Maiden albums? I was like, well, I'm not that fussed, but I actually prefer the Di'Anno era. But I totally understand what Dave's saying, that the Di'Anno era would maybe lasted 4 albums tops, and then it would have just gone. They'd have been splintered off and become different bands. Bruce Dickinson undoubtedly made them, successful. And I recently saw him described as the lead singer for the most successful metal band in the world, and you're hard pressed to find an argument with that. So in that case, you can't help but respect the guy. The fact that I'm not keen on his voice is neither here nor there. I'm very much in the minority. And you only have to look at how many stadiums have filled, how many albums have sold. That's all the proof you need. So yeah, without Bruce Dickinson, they wouldn't be where they are now. It's that simple.
Good point. Good point. Right then, Dave, who else have you got?
Secondly, Bon Scott. Bon Scott came into AC/DC. Again, it was a pivotal point in their career, although they hadn't released any albums at that point. Their first singer, Dave Evans, could carry a tune, and was probably, again, was okay for the sort of rowdy barroom scene that AC/DC were cutting the teeth in at the time. But quite apart from the fact that him and Malcolm never got along, and let's again be under no illusions, it was always Malcolm's band. It was never going to go anywhere. Not because they hadn't got the ability to write the songs, although if you listen to the first album, you'd think that they hadn't got the ability to write the songs. But it was, again, when Evans went out and Bon Scott came in, something clicked. There was something magical, something primal. He could work a crowd. He was a master lyricist. One of the, he used to call it toilet wall poetry. And you can see exactly the sort of the witty double entendres. He was just the master of it, getting it into those rhymes, getting it into those rhythms. He was just brilliant. Again, okay, he had his issues. He unfortunately died before the band got to where they were ultimately going to get with the album afterwards, where it exploded. But Bon Scott, to me, will always be the consummate entertainer. He's not the best showman. He's not the best singer. But you add the two together, and he's the best of those two. And I don't think anybody... There are very few, certainly in that sort of rootsy rock and roll, sort of gritty 70s rock stuff, that could hold the candle to him. If you're looking at the singers with that same X factor, obviously Freddie Mercury's one. But they're few and far between. They're like Rocking Us shit.
Again, some good points, viewers. Do you agree? Has Dave hit the nail on the head? Has he missed it completely? Now, one that I think probably will cause a bit of debate as well is the Judas Priest one. Rob with Ripper.
Yeah, Judas Priest, it's one of those sorts of things you get. There's a classic era of a band, classic lineup of a band. You could have the same debate. It's like Purple. Was it Gillan? Was it Coverdale Hughes? Was it Joe Lynn Turner? But people will always gravitate back to the one that gained the most success at the time. And it's because when, as I said earlier, when In Rock came out, it was a game changer. So they'll always gravitate towards Gillan. And I think it's the same with Judas Priest. Now, Priest built up their following through the 70s up to 1990 with Rob Halford. He got the sort of voice that you knew instantly. He came on, whether you liked it or not, he screamed his nuts off. And they put out some classic albums. If you go back to the likes of Stained Glass, Sin After Sin, Sad Wings of Destiny, Killing Machine, right through to Painkiller. Okay, they had a couple of duffers in between. Some of them that were a bit Gumby metal. One of the things I never got British Steel. I always thought it was a cabaret cop-out. And I know I'm in minority for that. But they kind of regained it with Screaming for Vengeance. And when Rob decided to go, now, like any band, the Priest camp, there are all sorts of stories that surround it. They've been together for so long. It doesn't always run like a vicar's tea party. There are always going to be conflicts. There are always going to be sides taken. But Rob decided to go and do his own thing. And they came and they announced that they got this guy from America, Tim Ripper Owens. Now, when you consider the likes of, was it Ralph Sheepers, auditioned for that sort of spot, you're thinking, why did they go with a guy that nobody knew? Would that be because he'd be more pliable and would basically be a yes man and do as he's told? But don't get me wrong, I saw Priest with Ripper in Manchester, and they put on a good show. But again, it wasn't Alford. He was coming in, he was doing a passable approximation. The guy's got a powerful voice, but it just wasn't Alford. And I think as well, the songwriting dynamic had gone at that point. You listen to the two albums that they did, they're more extreme, they're heavier. They're lacking the melody that Priest had with Rob Alford. So that's why I think it's not that he's a bad singer. But when he left the band and Rob came back, what's he done since that has really, people have gone, yeah, I can see what he did there. So it's not really helped his career in the long run. I mean, he appears on a succession of albums that's going to sell a few thousand copies each, which will be peanuts compared to what the new Priest will do, for example. So I just think it's one of those where they came in, they tried to get not a Rob Alford clone, not like Journey did with Arnell, but they tried to get somebody that was close enough. And I accept that it takes a lot. It takes a certain type of singer to be able to scream through those old Priest classics, which they would undoubtedly have had to have played. But it then just becomes at what point does it become an exercise in cabaret, in just filling arenas for an aging Blue Rinse Brigade? It lost its excitement. I don't think it got it back until Rob came back. And no disrespect to Tim, but the two albums that he put out with Priest do very little for me, if I'm honest.
Fair enough. I mean, I got to admit, I totally agree there, Dave. James, what do you think about the Judas Priest and the DC choices that Dave's got?
The AC/DC one, I think, is a fairly obvious one. A lot of people won't even know Dave Evans is. I don't think anybody would argue that AC/DC were better with Bon Scott than they were with Dave Evans. I don't think even Dave Evans would argue that. So that to me is like, there's no debate needed. It's just a fact. With Priest, if I remember rightly, didn't Ripper start off in a Priest tribute band? Isn't that what he was doing? Yeah. So that, to Dave's point, is basically it reminded me a bit of when Sean Connery left the Bond role. So it was like, let's get George Lazenby. Who's he? Some bloke from Advert. Put him in Sean Connery's suits, comb his hair like Sean Connery, try and make him Sean Connery. And that's basically what they did with Ripper Owens.
Yeah.
You were in a Priest tribute band. You can sing these songs like Rob Alford. That was basically what they did. It's the exact opposite of when like Ozzy left Sabbath. So bringing Dio, something new, something different, something that could take the band to a different level. It was like, let's get this guy who's a bit like the old guy, but cheaper. So yeah, it's like just there, isn't it? I don't think any Priest fans pointing at the Owens era going, "Oh yeah, that was good, wasn't it?" It's not. It's Rob Alford all the way. Some people, like Dave said, are just synonymous with a band. Bruce Dickinson with Iron Maiden, Rob Alford with Judas Priest.
Yeah.
Well, again, let us know. The guys are giving their verdicts. Let us know what you think. I mean, in some respects, I'm actually quite glad that we sidestepped the Sabbath issue because that's a kettle of fish in its own, isn't it? I mean, Ozzy Osbourne, Ronnie James Dio, and of course Tony Martin as well. That will probably take.
And Glenn Hughes, Andy and Gillan.
Yeah. David Donato at one point for about 10 minutes, wasn't
it? Yeah, for a photo shoot. That was as much as it.
Pretty much.
Gillan for a tour.
Yeah. That would be a tough one, Mopey. It would be a tough one to call because, like James alluded to earlier, Priest went with a carbon copy, basically.
Yep.
Journey went with a carbon copy.
Yeah.
Sabbath came along and did something completely different. They tipped it on his head.
No.
Yeah. You won't get anybody that should rightly argue that the Aussie era of Priest defined Sabbath, because again, it was a game changer. Dio coming in as good as having an Alan Mob Rules were, wasn't.
And of course, as well, we got our friend Ronnie Mamera, haven't we? I mean, he's changed lots of bands by coming. Not go there. No, stop.
I'll tell you what, right? One band you could put in that could literally tick both boxes. You could say Van Halen, because we've had the debate before. There's plenty of people who could say that Sammy Hagar made them better.
Yeah.
But then everybody would probably agree that Gary Cherone made them worse.
Yeah. But still, for me,
David Lee Roth now. What would you say that?
David Lee Roth again. He just defines classic Van Halen. It's tough. It's always a tough one. Sammy Hagar can sing him off the park any day. But
as a frontman, Roth was amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
Oh God, yeah. I'm saying, but these are the kind of. I mean, the internet thing. I mean, obviously, I was half joking when I said we nicked it, but it is a topic that can be debated so many ways. I mean, I limited the guys to 3 because, to be fair, I think within a couple of minutes of me putting the question out to them on email, I think James had come back with about a list of 72. So it's one of those things that you could go on and on for ages. But again, do you agree with what they've said? Have you got your own choices as well? Do you know groups that have been made worse by a singer coming in, or equally made better? Do let us know. But after that, we're gonna have another song now, and this is James's choice. And it is, again, the excellent Robert Hart, who's interviewed again in issue 106. And this song is called Lay Me Down Easy.
How it wind blows through my heart. Yes, it's the end, 'cause the world's apart. Those wasted years, I gave my all. Those empty tears, I watched them fall. You said the talking's over, with nothing left to say. I don't really know ya. Time to forget, go our separate ways. Lay me down easy. Putting up my hands, wanna fight no more. Lay me down, 'cause I'm down on my knees now. May not find no stand from one another war. Yes, I know there was a time I'd stand my ground. When you lost your mind, I wasn't backing down. For over time, guess I lost control. Break me down inside, it took its toll. Survive forever, we've been going on. Never say never, you can't go back where the fire is gone. Lay me down easy. Putting up my hands, wanna fight no more. Lay me down, 'cause I'm down on my knees now. May not find no stand, want another war. Where the walls are tumbling down. You gave me joy, you can't turn it around now. Said the talking's over, with nothing left to say. I don't really know ya. Time
if you're enjoying what you're listening to, please do us a favor and subscribe, like, or follow, depending on which platform you're listening to this on, this channel, because it really does help us to grow as a brand. And obviously, the better we get at this, the more followers, the more likes, the more subscribers we get, we can try and get better guests on, which obviously makes for a better program for you guys. So again, please follow, like, subscribe. We really appreciate it. Thank you. So there we have it. There's Lay Me Down Easy by Robert Hart. So obviously we've issue 106 coming out soon. Don't know if we mentioned it before, but we'll do it again. I've asked the guys this time just to pick one review, because obviously they write for the magazine and there's loads of reviews in there, so we don't want to spoil the fun too much. So I've asked them to pick either their best album, the best book, or the best DVD that they've heard or read or seen over the past 4 months. Dave, get us going.
Simple one, really, for me. The one album that I were privileged enough to hear back in November that finally came out a couple of weeks ago is obviously the new Saxon album. It's just blown me away. It is, for a band that have been going in one form or another since 1975, it's the best thing that they've done in decades. And I'm a big Saxon fan. The stuff that they've done since Dogs of War came back, really, nearly 30 years ago, is incredible. But this it nails that classic Saxon sound. You've got the crunchy riffs, you've got the lyrics, which, I mean, Biff's okay in the early days. You've got your Motorcycle Man and things like that, but he's always sort of shied away from that. He's always told interesting stories, things like Dallas 1 PM, with the assassination of President Kennedy, and he continues to do that. I mean, it's a bit of a mouthful as a song title, but Kubla Khan and the Merchant of Venice. It's about Marco Polo's trip to China. So he really packs it in. But whether the difference this time is that Paul Quinn was no longer involved in the songwriting and it's come back to bouncing ideas off of Brian Tatler, don't know what it is, but it's the best classic Saxon sounding album with a modern production that you could wish for. Andy Sneap, who's done the Judas Priest, he's done the new Accept. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible from beginning to end. There's not a duff track on it, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Really can't. I mean, I know I'm an old metalhead, but it's the one album that has jumped out at me this year and said, "Yep, that's got to be bought."
Highly underrated as well, Saxon, aren't they? They seem to be a band that's constantly flying under the radar.
Seems so. I don't quite get why. I mean, they got to the stage where they were filling city halls in the late 80s. They were playing bigger gigs abroad, and they've started since the 90s, the late 80s, 90s when it crashed, and they released a string of subpar albums, and they couldn't get arrested. It's gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger. I last saw them not last year before. They played they did Montfort in Leicester, which was always one of the sort of city hall sized venues when I was a kid growing up. So it's nice to see them back in that again, and it's nice to see that they're going to take to the big stages with Priest. And I mean that 3-band bill with Uriah Heep on there, I think it's going to be fantastic. Can't wait for the show in Leeds. I think all bands, they'll be firing on all six. They'll all put on a great show. But yeah, Saxon, they now seem to be finally getting the recognition that they deserve. They should be sort of viewed as sort of inspirational and influential in the sort of heavy metal sphere, because they are and were. They've got a 24 studio album recording career. That's incredible.
Definitely. And I've got to say as well, I mean, I've been privileged as well to read the interview that Dave did for the magazine, and it's a superb one. You are certainly not going to be disappointed when you read it, guys. So again, another good reason to go and buy the magazine. Make sure you get your copy. James, what have you been up to?
Well, it was a difficult question for me, this one, because I've been somewhat underwhelmed with a lot of the things I was sent to review this issue.
Okay.
There was a couple of them I was just like, it's doing nothing for me. There was a couple of others I was quite looking forward to, which I only sort of liked half the material on it, and I thought it sort of petered out a bit. there hasn't been much in the way of like albums that I've enjoyed start to finish. And then I was going to pick the Saxon one, and then Dave's beat me to it, so I can't do that. Because after Dave raved about it, I went and listened to it. I was like, "This is really good. Yeah, I like this." But so I won't do that one. I'll go back to, I mentioned it on Facebook the other week. Andy Taylor's "Man's a Wolf to Man," because we played a track from it a few podcasts ago, and I've always liked his solo work. I never really was that fussed about Duran Duran, but the stuff he did outside of it, the Power Station and his solo stuff, I always liked that. And I felt a bit guilty that I didn't have it in my top albums of the year because I didn't get it until Christmas time. We'd already gone to print, but I started playing it. That's the one I've been returning to the most. Everything on there is just really, really well put together and well crafted. And it's sort of an album that came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting one from him. There was no big fanfare around it. It was just, obviously he's had health issues and things have gone wrong in the world, and it's kind of inspired him, and he was like, "Oh, it could be my last album," and that's got him in the right frame of mind. And he's put out an absolute corker, and I hope it's not his last album, but if it is, what a way to sign off. But yeah, everything on that I thought was brilliant. I thought it was an absolutely stonking record, so definitely check that out if you've not heard it.
And it's got so many different styles as well. That's what got me when I.
Yeah, really eclectic. Some real good guests on it. You got Gary Stringer from Reef, Tina Arena, but it's not like a random mishmash. It's just a really good record.
Indeed, yeah. So there you go, folks. There's two opposite ends of the spectrums, I think we can say. And Andy Taylor's and then Saxon. Probably two you won't get on the same bill, I'd imagine. But again, very good albums, very good choices. So do check them out. Right. So neither Dave or James know about this, but recently I asked them to come up with their ideal band. As per normal, Dave slightly bent the rules again, but still came up with a really good choice. If you haven't listened to it or seen it, obviously, I think it was the last Pyrotechnics where we revealed the final missing piece. But this time I'm going to ask them to do the same, but the caveat is that we all know that rock stars love their flowing locks. So this time it's literally the best band containing the best hair. So that obviously means that someone like Roger Taylor, unfortunately, is going to be out. Although he did have long hair at the beginning of his career, he's obviously more known for his short blonde, short spiky hair. So we're not going to let people like Roger Taylor. So it's got to be somebody that had the best hair. So there you go. There's a challenge, and we're going to call this this segment the alternative best hair band. And no, it's not sponsored by Pantene or Head and Shoulders or anything like that. So it's got to be the artists, drummers, keyboards, guitarists that have got the best flowing locks in the business. So that should get them thinking for a minute. So what we'll do is when we do the next podcast, I'll get them to reveal their. Let's go with singer. Let's go with singer with the best long hair, the best flowing locks that they can think of. And Dave, it can be either someone that's living or dead. I'll let you have that one. It's no matter if I say it's living, you'll do it anyway. So hey-o.
It's just when you mentioned it there, it just immediately took me back to Nelson. And was it Sylvie Sims at Kerrang that christened them the Timotei twins? And it just absolutely nailed it.
Fair enough. Well, okay, get your thinking caps on, chaps. So, yeah, the best alternative hair band, literally the hair band. Right. Well, I think we're getting to our hour's end, and I think we've actually managed to keep within the time slot we normally try and do. So I want to thank you guys all for listening to this episode. But before we go, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the episode, I set these chaps a question. And that question was, who out of these 4 American and Canadian bands has had the most UK top 10 albums up to obviously date? So the choices were A, Nickelback, B, Aerosmith, C, Linkin Park, and D, Pearl Jam. So, Dave, go on then. Give us your answer first.
Given that Aerosmith were big in the States in the 70s, but not particularly over here, and we're only really big over here for a brief period in the late 80s, given that I've never really listened to more than 2 tracks of Linkin Park because it does me head in, I'd have to go with Nickelback.
Okay. James, who are you picking?
I was inclined to agree with that because I was thinking about it, and again, it's like Aerosmith had like a 3 album run when they were commercially successful, and then when it came to Linkin Park, there was dozens of bands out at that time doing the same sort of thing, and they all sounded the same to me, which makes me sound like a real old fart. But they did, and I don't know how successful one was over the other because it was like that sort of scene did nothing for me at all. And I don't think Pearl Jam were around long enough to have clocked up enough albums to say, oh, it's those guys. Whereas Nickelback have been around quite a while now, and everybody knows at least one Nickelback song, and they're still fill big arenas. So I'd go with them as well.
Okay, so both of you say Nickelback. Do you really think that I would make it that easy?
No.
No. Right. Well, the actual answer is Nickelback had 7 top 10 UK albums. They had 10. Beg your pardon, they had 9 UK top 40 albums. Aerosmith had 6 top UK 10 albums, and they had 12 UK top 40 albums in the whole. Linkin Park had 8 top 10 UK albums, 12 in all in the top 40. Pearl Jam had 9 top 10 UK albums, 11 UK top 40 albums. So you're both wrong. It was Pearl Jam.
Excellent.
Oof.
So
You look really pleased with yourself there, Pete.
yeah. Well, you absolutely got me on the first one. I had to somehow manage to make it a bit harder. So yeah.
Oh, I'm genuinely surprised by that, but okay, fair enough. Well played, Pearl Jam.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, me too. I'm surprised by that, but it just shows in some respects how out of touch I am with that type of. When grunge came in, it just, apart from Alice in Chains, completely floored me. Got no interest in it whatsoever. I ran away from it whenever anything got mentioned about it, so I would have had no clue. Yeah.
Funny thing, like we said at the beginning as well, Dave, Pearl Jam are actually classified as a rock band.
Yeah.
So yeah, just shows you.
The problem I had with like the sort of grunge era is not only did I find most of the songs quite dull, and because that was the whole thing, it was like plaid shirts, looking down, miserable.
Yeah.
Because I got into a lot of these bands later than a lot of other people. All these bands I got into now weren't touring anymore because of all this Seattle stuff. Just cancelled them all out. So it was years before I got to see Whitesnake or bands like that because you just killed them all off.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I must admit, it made me laugh when Dave said about Linkin Park. He listened to 2 songs and he runs away screaming. Because I must admit, I actually, out of all the bands, I mean, of sort of that era, Linkin Park were the one that I could actually listen to without wishing to tear out my hair. Yeah.
I always remember they used to have some fantastic videos on MTV.
Yes,
There's some great videos.
Visually, they were superb as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just musically, it did nothing for me.
I mean, obviously, we have to say, rest in peace to poor Chester Bennington. I think that was a terrible shame as well. But yeah, so there you go, Pearl Jam. So no points. So James is still losing on this one, I'm afraid, mate. So
no worries. There's always next time.
Indeed, yeah.
Can we stick to classic rock or dead guitarists next time, please?
I was going to do the hits of Ronnie Romero.
Yeah, ask us questions about people we like, and we might do all right.
I thought you were experts. I don't know.
Everyone's an expert until they get something they don't know.
That is very true. That's very true. So that brings us nicely to the end of the show now. If I can mention issue 116 one final time, you can buy it from either WH Smith's or McCall's, or of course you can go to our website, www.fireworks-magazine.com, and buy it as either a hard copy or a digital download. Also, don't forget those 2 festivals we've got going as well. We've got Firefest later on in the year. But before that, we've got Tower of Fire. And again, those tickets can be bought from our website. There's some fantastic bands appearing, and you really don't want to miss out. Right. So, without further ado, I'm going to say goodbye to my guests. Thank you very much for joining us, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for having us again, Pete. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it, everybody, and see you again next time.
And thank you very much for joining us, James.
Always a pleasure. Happy to do it.
I've been your host, Pete Arnett, and hopefully in the next couple of editions, we're going to have some more special guests. So please keep tuned. Give us a like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. It does help the channel to grow. Keep listening to that music, keep enjoying it, and above all, take care, everybody.